Hello, and welcome back for another insightful conversation. I previously recorded this conversation and asked my friend Anusha to join me to speak with Jim a little bit more about the electron. We hope you find this conversation as enjoyable and insightful as we did. Enjoy.
First, I wanted to understand it from the perspective of physics. We have the nucleus of it is the proton and the neutron, and the electrons orbit around, creating the atomic structure. And we pick the electron and are working with it. Is there any particular reason, or is it a metaphor because we don't know enough in 3D physics?
Well, we know enough in 3D physics to make the representation that physics makes. And the representation has been all along that exactly what you said, the nucleus, the protons, and the electrons. But that's not correct. So when IBM built the first atomic electron microscope, what they found was electrons very neatly fit into a compacted area in and around in the atom. They don't whirl around the atom. They just basically are a electromagnetic field of light, electron, and it vibrates at a vibrational rate and it vibrates at a speed. And and so that's where physics, I'm being really simple and not beating up physics, that's kind of where it stops in a manner of speaking. And everything that physics knows works really well in the platform that physics has represented, which is mechanical physicalness. But soon as you get out of that box and you begin to go into another layer, quantum physics, all of a sudden the pieces don't work quite the same. And one of the things that's interesting is there's two fields of thought. One has been buried, like lots of things in science, biology, and in the sciences. One's gotten pushed way over to the side, and the mainstay of physics has come in to be the player. And it works. It works, except it doesn't work once you start getting into quantum physics. And then what's beyond quantum physics, theoretically, something, So when you start to play in the level of quantum physics, that other body of information begins to deviate from the norm. And what we're kind of saying is that the electron is what builds the atom. The atom doesn't just attract an electron. It says we've given all the power to the atom and the electron just spins around it. It's really quite the opposite. So now if I go from where kind of I'm speaking about things and where others are beginning to speak, if I was to put it into spiritual terms, the first light, which is a wave pattern, and a particle, two forms of light. And the wave pattern basically is outside of a physical awareness. It's, the light that lights up a room. It's in the space, but it's not defined as a physical space, light. Once light drops into a different vibrational pattern, it slows down to the speed of light, as we define speed of light, 186,000 miles a second, I think. What happens is it becomes that particle of light. And so, but it holds the same potency as the wavelength of light. And so now you're basically beginning to create physicalness. And the archangelics have said, you in physicalness are the ones who create form in physicalness. We don't think up an idea and then poof, it appears. You got to do it from physicalness. So that's one of the reasons why so many of the sciences, physics included, is it's all about the physicalness. They don't get out of the box to gather the 8 additional data, then to come back and say, now if we applied it this way. If we change the angle or change the speed or change the amplitude of the light frequency, in this case, the electron, what happens is the electrons begin to assemble themselves in such a way that you form an atom. So if you, for example, if I said I would like oxygen, no, let's make it even simpler. I would like water, so H2O. And so what I have to do is I have to basically assemble those. Well, that's easy. That's physical chemistry and physics. And so we know how to do that. But what happens is the O, the oxygen, has 6 electrons. And so but the electron is simply an electron, which begins to be, now here's a deviation, it's an idea. It's an idea. An idea is thought. So go back to my space where we played a number of times where I've said, what is that? Being, oh, I just had an idea, or I just had a thought. And then the thought gets a little denser and it becomes an idea, and the idea gets denser, becomes a concept, and the concept begins to have motion attached to it into form. So just being really simple mechanics. But the original came from somewhere, so we'll call it consciousness. And the consciousness has all this information. Now we're going to wander off here a little bit, but not really. Has all this information available to you, me, to create. We're the creator beings. And so what happens, the more you begin to play at paying attention to the and the more you maybe meditate, the more you have intention, and the more you're able to hold your attention on your intention, it starts to have density. Okay? And so the idea of your density is, we're going to say water. Okay, I want to create water. I'm trying to be simple. I could say aluminum, I could say anything, but the electrons. So now that hydrogen has got 1 electron, but oxygen's got 6. And so in order to get the water, the electrons have to form to conform with your idea, your thought, your See, and all that is you and the creator having an idea and going, oh, that's an interesting thought. And it starts in motion. And the electrons begin to spin in motion. Now, I'm just being simple with hydrogen and oxygen. But look around. Where did all this physicalness come from? And it's in so many shapes and forms. So, am I okay so far?
Yeah, you've just described the apple. How does the apple come into being? So, wow. Okay. Yeah, that leads me into this. I was going to ask about the particle and the wave idea, where we bring a wave of light and it slows down into a particle. And that's what you described as densification in some way to coalesce into some creation.
Into form, into physical.
Into form. And that requires a slowing down in that, but there's a way to create this without reducing the divinity in it. And there's a way to actually bring it down into form. So can you talk a little bit about the difference in that?
So here's where we, as physical dense beings in a third dimensional agreement, play on a game board that has limitations and restrictions that hold us in a space. This is how it works, mom, dad, teacher, minister said, and their mom, dad, teacher, minister said the same thing. And a lot of things that really were said that was like, here's the magic. Well, the magic began to be a bad thing, literally. And so, again, that's science that doesn't conform to the possibility of creation, just like so many of the physical sciences got pushed off to the side. So in a way, where we're playing in Mastering Alchemy is where this whole shift is going. And in a way, so what I'm going to say is not in conformity to what we know, right? Because we've accepted X, Y, and Z, and so much of what we've accepted is unconscious programming that we just said, okay, that's how it works. So, but one of the pieces is that's going to become, it's hard to hear this because you're pushing up against what you have already heard and believed. And much of what you've heard and believed is unconscious programming that's already in your space. So soon as, and you watch this with lots of things, when somebody says, oh, this is how this works, the immediate reaction is, no, it doesn't. No, that's not true. Well, I say, well, how do you know what you know is true is true? Well, and there's usually an answer to that. So in this space, as it's kind of being explained to me, creator is simply one, only one, not two, not one plus there's more out there. It doesn't have an answer to the question, well, there must have been a creator before the creator, because otherwise the creator wouldn't be the new creator. And so that's 3D thinking. That's the old thinking process. Because anything that just says it's always been is not conceivable in a 3D space. Would that make sense? So you have to kind of push everything to the side and basically say, okay, I'm going to look at something new, and I don't have any preconceived notions. I'm just going to start to follow this from the beginning. And from the beginning is source, creator, consciousness is one, meaning there's no division. Everything is a singular, undivided consciousness. But the creator wanted to know itself, and it basically started to say, I want to know more. And in the simpleness, we've always said, it's kind of reached into itself and created a gazillion creator gods. They don't have form, They are the creator putting forth an aspect of itself to go out and experience more. Okay. And once it does that, it begins to create a division, not of one. One is one. That didn't divide. You and the creator are the same energy expressed in a slightly different angle or speed or motion. Okay. And so as soon as that happens, you begin to have divided. Now it's still one. It's not breaking into two. It's you and it's Vida and it's me, and we're all the creator, just decorated differently to have an experience. Okay. And each one of our experiences begins to be, and then a thought, an idea, a concept. And it begins. And so you have an interesting idea. You start to explore it. You put more energy into it, more time into it. It begins to take on more form. In the case of 3D, same thing happens in non-physical space, but it's not a physical creation. It's a different aspect. So you begin to have this idea, and it gets more dense and gets more dense. Remember, thoughts have density. Thoughts are physical density. They're just not as dense as the rock. So as the thoughts begin to take form, the numbers of things happen. It might be simply, I want a glass of water, and I reach over and get the glass of water. I drink the water. I put the glass down, and I have completed that circuit, that cycle, that intention, that idea. And what happens is that idea of I want a glass of water all of a sudden I can have it in a blue glass, a green glass. I can have it from the creek. I can have it from the ocean. I can have it from the faucet. Multiple possibilities begin to present themselves to choose from. And you basically are content with your choice. So, okay, you fill up your glass, doesn't matter what color. And so there's no energy on the blue one is better than the red one. And so you have your drink of water and you're comfortable with it and you put your glass back down. And what happens is what was whole and then divided, the thought began to divide, red glass, blue glass, yellow glass. And so you had multiple possibilities and you began to narrow it into a very specific, tangible intention. And everything unlike your blue glass fell off the table. Fourth aspect of time falls off the table. And so then my intention really is I want to drink the water in the glass, and I do that, and then I can put the glass down. Well, now the glass is of no importance. The remaining water in the glass is of no importance. The need to have a drink is of no importance. And so what happens is all the division gets settled right back down and comes back into a completeness. You had an idea, drink water, satisfy thirst, and I was successful. And now I no longer have a need for that creation, but the creation was created. So now when it goes back into the undivided space, the void, as some call it, kind of what we said was all the great ideas that are not being used any longer go back into a suspended animation. They just go back, but they're complete ideas, whereas before there was no idea. That's the important part. And so all the ideas, thoughts ever thought that are not being applied kind of go back into this state of quietness. Nothing moves. There's no ripples until somebody says, gee, I wonder if there's a different way to drink water. All of a sudden, the idea was an idea once upon a time. It comes back into choice. So, everything has a different density, unless it's the same thing in a different color, or different sound or something. The density is basically the same. So, so depending on what you wish to create, in physicalness, there's always a density to it. It has, you could call it weight, but weight is more gravity than it is weight. It has a density to it that basically provides what it is you want for the purpose you want it.
Like a mass, would like saying mass be a better word here? Like it's a volume of?
No, I don't, it could be, but basically, so you have an idea and that has density. You have your glass of water that has density, two different creations for two different purposes. So everything has density based on the purpose that it's intended to create. So if you want to listen to music, you start narrowing in on the kind of music you want to listen to. And then by definition, music has a form to it versus just sound that is erratic and all over the place. So somehow you had to take sound and organize it into vibrational patterns that began to be more harmonic and more rhythmic and had a particular direction to them, jazz versus classical. And some people liked jazz and some people liked classical. And so now it's, I have another idea. What if we do this? And so it just keeps expanding and expanding. And based on it, some music has the body go right into motion. Other music has the body go into sadness. And so it's the vibration of the density that you're feeling or engaging with.
Would density be considered information?
Sure.
A set of information to create something? I'm just wondering if stepping outside of this idea of like density or compact or heaviness or a low vibration and removing that label off of density, if it helps to understand, like how you're talking sound and movement and angle of creation in its informational format, it's structured.
Well, let me see if I can approach it from this way. So we're going to give up all of our 3D definitions, okay, which is incredibly hard because you don't even know where you got that idea that just simply drives you. It's like I get up in the morning, I put clothes on. Why do you do that? Because that's what I'm supposed to do, or I have a reason I don't want to be cold or I don't want to be too hot. What if you were able to basically say, I have a need, a want, and I have the capacity to manifest the apple. Now let's just play from there. You have the capacity. You don't know why, how, but you know that if you think about it, if I recognize I need to get quiet and I need to simply bring my attention to my intention, and I need to, in that quiet, aligned, aware space, I basically recognize I can begin to hold an awareness of density, speed, motion, amplitude, the angle of my attention point. So I'm bringing in common words, but I'm bringing them in a very different configuration. And so you don't need to know how that all happens. You just have now had enough experience creating apples that it happens. It's just like you don't question, is the water going to come out of the faucet? Not even a question. So now you basically begin to recognize, and so, like I said yesterday, the vibration or the sound that you're using. So some sounds will open up the width or the angle. Other sounds will smooth it out or close it down. And so if you think about, I want to have a good conversation, but I'm outraged and I'm angry and I'm resentful, kind of the way the flow is, it doesn't allow for the outcome to really come about. So if you change, let's call it the angle, and you basically say, well, I'm not hating that person, I'm just angry at that person. Oh, well, can you step it down a little bit more to where I'm really frustrated with this person, and then I step it down a little bit more? I get a very different result as I change the angle of the vibration. Am I making any sense? So, and if I'm really clear with no doubt and no prejudicial third dimensional game board programming, in a way, it's very much similar, which is really fun and remarkable, is I could say there is no fourth aspect of time. That was all make-believe. I just made it up. Now, let's just decide, but did you believe me?
Yeah.
Okay. So you had enough history where you give up seniority to a programming without any doubt. Okay. Same thing we're saying. And then we created a vehicle that basically changed the angles and changed the vibration, but it was well within your grasp. And you basically recognize that if I just put what I want here and I move everything else off the table, I get what I want. Now, I could be making that up. Maybe I didn't make it up. Maybe it really was fourth aspect of time, but maybe not.
Jim, this is interesting because I understood it differently this time. So I kind of thought 3D was incoherent, but what you're saying is there is a coherence to a different kind of belief even in 3D. But in 5D, we are incoherent with that belief. That is the difference here. I don't want to believe in that coherence. So it's not like one is chaotic and one is resonant. Both are, but in different truths.
Yes.
That is interesting.
So you watch people who are not paying attention and are kind of engaged in the programming of the game of 3D. They're not they don't have the ability. They have the ability, but they don't have the means to get quiet or to explore something new. They just keep repeating the old thing over and over. And so, and they keep getting the same result over and over. Okay. And so what happens is there comes a point where you do the same thing and you realize, wait, if I just kept my mouth shut, they would have given me exactly what I was asking for rather than telling them they were ugly and stupid and didn't know what they were doing. And so I have an aha in that moment. And now whether I live from that aha every moment forward, or whether it just was something that presented and I didn't grasp it. I heard it, I got it, I recognized it, and then they did something stupid again, and so I have to go argue with them again and there it slips away. And it comes again, and it comes again, and it comes again, and finally sticks. And at that point, all I do is step into a different vibrational angle or speed or vibrational field. So,
wow. Yeah, that explains the interface that we've been talking about very differently from what I heard before.
See, so, and where we're all playing and mastering alchemy is now you've gotten to the point where you realize if I do that, I get a result I don't like. And you've got that part down well enough that you pretty much don't go there anymore. Sometimes, but pretty much not. Okay. And then if you begin to get a new bridging, okay, let's call it a bridging, octave, bridging, fourth aspect of time, bridging. What do I want? Began to become more conscious as, why does he keep saying that? And all of a sudden it's like, oh, what do I want? It's not him saying it. It's what do I want? Was a very simple question that just didn't register over and over and over and over for the better part of the whole year.
And can we use that question? Because that's a fascinating question into the narrowing that you were talking about earlier. Into, well, what color of glass? Okay, well, what type of water? And it gets really interesting that continuing what do I want question continues to narrow your focus into a new direction.
Well, and what do I want changes. I mean, basically the generic what do I want and the multiple what do I wants underneath the generic one. I want happy. Okay, what else? What else? What else? What else? What do I want? What happens though is the sun is rising and you're going from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, and the light at noon is different than the light at 6:30 at night. And so your availability of creation, I used to say the bikini at 11 o'clock at night really doesn't work very well on the beach, at least for getting a suntan. So different variations at different times. So there is time sequences, not time sequences as in the clock, but there's alignments of angles and motion and availability. And so we're on the coming around on this 227,000 year cycle to a new place. You know, the age of Aquarius, a new place in that, you know, progression of the equinoxes. And what happens is, you know, it's like, gee, I stood at the door and it says it doesn't open till 9 o'clock. It's now beginning to be 9 o'clock. Now you go into that store and, oh, very different than standing on the other side of the door. And so where we are right now, what makes this very exciting is we are moving into a whole new cycle. So hence, again, the dawning of the day, and it's getting lighter and lighter and lighter, and you're starting to see a whole lot of things that have always been there, but you've never seen. And what happens also is you're starting to see things that you know that you haven't seen for a long time.
Mm.
And so all of a sudden you see a new tree in the forest and it's like, oh, I know what this is. But you haven't seen it for a long time.
I was just going to say that gets to be an interesting consideration because so much of what at least we do to get what we want, we force. So we're going to push that clock and make that time. So I'm going to shove on that door. But right, that paradox, what was true a moment ago may not be true now, changes kind of everything of what you believed is or was, or certainty of, I know it's this way. It kind of just makes everything really nebulous.
Absolutely. Because it's no longer true in the same construct that you've held it as true before. Doesn't mean it's not true. Mm-hmm. It just means there may be more to the truth. And when you understand more to that truth or that experience or that awareness, that becomes an element. It was just like the first chakra being defined as all about survival until it was defined to be all about well-being with a little 5% slice of don't get too close to the edge of the cliff. And it's like, oh gosh, of course, that makes so much sense. It falls into a perspective that is then allowed to be just known, not thought. Once you heard that truth, you can't go back to the old truth. And the new truth or the new body of information provides a whole lot of opportunity. And if, oh, by the way, I'm standing a little too close to the cliff, it's like, oh, maybe I'll just move away. It's not, oh my God, oh my God.
It's an interesting, when you're wanting to create the apple, consideration to go, okay, and then the intelligence of the electrons and to consider what they have. And then I guess timing, if timing's the right word, like you said, the dawning of the sun, if it's noon, maybe it's midnight. And knowing, so timing, whether that's speed, right? And then there's kind of the intelligence of the organization of here's what I want, how I want it, that play into the result of. I guess I'm just kind of looking at how this creation comes together.
Well, what also happens is you start to be aware of what do I want? And it's not, I need it right now for the most part. And so you realize I really want to go sit on the beach, but I got to wait until the sun comes up. No problem. I'm going to do something else in the meantime. I don't go into loss and drama and, oh no, this can't be happening. I'm aware enough that there's movement in all these parts, and I don't have to have all the parts together at one time in one place because I'm not even going to use most of the parts in any given minute. So what happens is you begin to allow the energy to form in such a way that it calms down, becomes smoother. You have less need to get in the way of your want. And then you basically begin to recognize, I, in fact, don't have any real agenda for when all this happens or doesn't happen. I don't need to know. I just have a need to want, a desire to experience. And if I put it out there long enough, I'm going to give you an example. So Roxanne and I both have a desire to go watch the Aurora Borealis, like many people. And never happened, just hasn't happened. And so here we have an opportunity all of a sudden to sell our condominium in Belize in the next few days. And the people buying it are really cool people, and they're from Alaska. And they don't have any money with them in Belize, where they are now for the last 3 months, because they can't wire money from their bank without being at their bank. And so it was like, well, how about if we just fly up to Alaska and we'll have lunch? Works for me. And there are auroras coming. So did I have to work at that adventure? No. Is it going to happen? I don't know. Maybe it's there to happen.
This is a really beautiful example. And can you add we've talked about the intelligence, that their electrons are intelligent beings. Can you talk about their intelligence versus basically what you just described, relaxing, letting go, holding your intention?
So the electron is love, and the electron is creator at that vibrational alignment that takes light into a particle. Okay? Now, vast, huge, massive, and it's only a little drop of water in the great universe of everything. Okay? So everything is light and love, and then you change the alignment of the light into a density, and that particle has love. It's all about love, light and love. It's the creators basically, especially when you start looking at that undifferentiated light, and you, the creator with that light in the pineal center, basically go up into the Ark of the Covenant mechanics and say to the creator, this is what we want to create. And that Zeon particle begins to form creation. And it's done in a way to where there's no 3D in that configuration. And you just start to allow that to unfold. And so that particle is creation in pure love, light created in pure love, that has no agenda until you say, I would like, I have a desire for, I want to build X. And the electron realigns itself to basically provide the physical elements to meet your need. They're in service too, purely, 100%.
Jim, I want to pull on this thread of undifferentiated light a little bit. So that seems it's electrons' love without agenda to be used for anything really by creator beings, and it comes into your field, my field, and I can add my light to it because creator beings have our own unique signature, unique electronic light that we can add to it. And then how does that add a purpose automatically, or can I just radiate light simply without agenda? How would that work?
It's that light that you have now to do anything. You can do anything. You and the creator create from that undifferentiated light equally. Now, what happens is you don't know everything the creator knows in your conscious application of creation. But you and the creator are exactly the same energy. You know everything the creator knows. You may not know how to align with it in such a way that you access it. So here we're going back, and this is again where the angles, the amplification, the motion, the nature of plus and minus. Now, plus and minus is not good or bad or positive or negative. There's points where you go forward and there's points where you step back. Okay. And there's points where your creation winds up running into a level of resistance, not an anger, or just it begins to push against. You say, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. And it's never out of balance. So all of a sudden you're getting further and further and further and further over here without paying attention to, have I built all the building blocks? And so in a simple way, you're building more blocks and they're all laying a little bit more on an angle and a tangent, and they're starting to move over here and move over here. And then all of a sudden something goes, you might want to wait before you put this next block on there. That resistance, we'll call it. It's not resistance as argument. It's just, this is out of balance, this creation. And so you start to get pushback. And so that's one part of this. Everything is always in equilibrium. Creator is always in equilibrium. You may have 3 items over here, but you got 3 items over here. They may be different items, but the balance and the equilibrium is always present. Okay. The bubble, if you say oneness, like a big spherical bubble, that probably gets pushed and pulled, and it's like a soap bubble. You push it and it gets a big dent in it, but it bulges out over here. So the bubble can never break. It always is in a state of equilibrium, although it may be in a state of imbalance in some aspects of what it is. Too much over here, I'm counterweighting it over here, but this is creating a stress over here. And if you look at the game that's unfolding, it's unfolding in a kind of fascinating way. It's all beginning to break apart. But sometimes you have to push out of balance in order to realize, whoa, I'm out of balance.
Can I ask one more question just about what I'm hearing of kind of in this whole conversation is there's 2 things where in creation, it's definitely an act of I want, but then there's so much of a relaxation and just allowing, right? There's the timing, the angles, that's getting a little tipsy. Gonna bring that back in. It becomes more of an observation, but yet in the same aspect with all the work we've done in Mastering Alchemy and with the park bench, there's always kind of a I don't know if it's a push or maybe that's the push in my space that says, okay, what do I do next? So the Electron, super excited about it. Today was like, all right, so there's electrons all around me. Just kind of like how my question wants to be, what do I do to get smarter, better? How do I play with and create the apple? How can I get all these electrons aligned? Do you know what I mean? There's some level of trying understanding versus pushing. So I was just wondering what you would say to that.
Yeah. Don't ask those questions.
Sure.
Go for a walk in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about being quiet, present, and aware. It's not about asking the question and looking for the answer. The answer arrives where the question is asked. Level 2, level 1. Mm-hmm. I'm blown away by what's in level 2 and level 1. I mean, we could have stopped right there and just said it over and over and over, but we had to bring it all the way out to here in order for somebody to go, oh, the answer is where the question is asked. Duh. That's,
Yes, but then the butt sits in my space like, Jim, I can't make an apple yet. It's not sitting in my hand.
That's exactly right.
I want it. I'll make it up here in my hand. How do I do it?
No, you're not doing it. You're just intellectualizing it. You're not running. I mean, in that case, that person, whoever that person is not quiet and not paying attention and not recognizing. And what Mastering Alchemy has been all along. I mean, if I change the vibration from hate to anger to frustration to disappointment, what I realize is I love this person and I don't know what to do with them. And so when you stop needing and stop needing to prove, because that's part of the unconscious performance, and just go wander off into the forest for a little while. So why do you think what's happening is what's happening right now, Vida?
Mm-hmm.
So, time to wander into the forest in a way. So what does that mean for you? Or, I mean, not you, everybody. And see, you can't hold on to, I need, or I want, or I have to prove it. The I want, this is not a wanting, as you're expressing all that. That's not a wanting, that's a noise. That's just noise. It's really quiet and basically asking the question, how do I have to form the energy? How do I get to play with the energy? Who knows how to do that can guide me playing with the energy to have this apple appear in my hand? And then simply walk away from the world. That's what's happened forever. And, all the ones that go to the caves and top of the mountains and bury themselves in monasteries to some extent. Most of them all wanted the answer that you're asking, and they never got it. And then those that got it never returned to the monastery. See, you once you understand the answer, you recognize you don't play the game that was leading up to finding the answer to the answer.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Yeah. Good.
Yeah, quiet, present, aware. Answer lies where the question is asked. Slower you go, faster you arrive, and be amused with yourself on the journey.
Excellent. Anusha, do you have any more questions you want to ask?
Not after this. That was great. No, no, it is always. You read in all of these masters from the Far East and every one of these things where once you get it, you're like, why did I do this? I could have done so much. I could have built an entire planet, and why did I do this? And I don't have to do it anymore because I know how to do it. And that's what you just described. It's like once you know the mechanics.
You get to play in this game, and recognize a whole lot of things, and in a way, what is happening, this game's not going to be played again. And there's lots of places all through all that is that are in 3D. And so as you begin to build these venues that people can start to notice, just little thoughts that you have that untangle a problem, and then you're done with that problem. And you're all of your creation to untangle the problem, and then the comfortable ease with the answer to the problem, you basically don't go revisit the problem. But what the whole adventure does, all of the nuances in the configurations to get to that point of ease are now basically brought back into that undivided space and sit in, what I kind of referred to as that lake of non-motion. Nothing's going on. There's no ripples. There's no motion. There's nothing. It's just simply absolutely quiet until somebody else says, how do I do that? And then
there's a beautiful, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
Now, I was saying there's a beautiful poem which says, I am whole, as in WHOLE, full. You are full. And when I take from the fullness, that fullness is not reduced.
Exactly.
But it just gets added to.
Yeah.
Because we both started out full. It's not like I'm asking from lack. I'm asking from the fullness. And so when I pull from fullness, nothing is reduced, nothing is destroyed.
Right. Exactly. Wow. Exactly. And you've just added to you, the expansion of you, to ask another question and pull from that fullness. One of the things that we did literally in level 1, in some of the early parts of level 1, is we started, and in level 2, there's a piece where you started dealing with all of the ancestral moms programming, and took that out. And then we also did a session where you get rid of all the vows and the beliefs and the I swear allegiance to, and that stuff is just really toxic in this journey, because I'm giving my total seniority and complete loyalty to. And when you do that, you're doing that. That's not just words that are thrown up against the wall. That's a configuration of angles and motions and vibrations that begin to be part of your makeup. See, one of the other things that we've talked about sporadically is you are your next lifetime in creation right now. What you think, how you play, what you want, and how you align it in this lifetime is very much what you're setting in motion for the next lifetime. So one of the things that we've been doing is unraveling an awful lot of all that lineages, and in this case, unraveling a lot of I hate, or I'm angry with, or I'm not okay because, really trying to clean the board so that when we get to the stage where we are now, the ability to be able to step into a loving, kind, respectful, dignified being with an excitement, a passion to begin to create that next lifetime in the light that's being provided. So that's one of the key components of Mastering Alchemy Objective. Not just I'm not okay, blow the picture. It's a tremendous liability going forward.
Yeah, I've always liked both as a metaphor and as a reality, the idea of creating the next lifetime. Just as a metaphor, it frees you from, oh, but I'm this old, oh, but I have this body and I have this. And if you start there, you're putting yourself in these boxes even before you have an intention. Whereas if I say my next lifetime, it could be tomorrow. And I like that very recently in one of the sessions, you said, breakfast is done, now breakfast is dead. Right? And now we'll go to lunch. So that could just be my next lifetime. But the metaphor of lunch doesn't have to be, oh, I'm full from breakfast and I've already met these people and I don't want to meet anybody else. So it frees you up to create again from scratch in that way.
Yeah.
But it is really a next lifetime as well, is because what you create, you have to experience. So whether you do it now or whether you come back to do it.
Well, and see, that's one of the biggest challenges right now in 3D is there's those that are advancing and going forward, and those are declining, building walls and getting back into the tribe. And all they're doing is basically restructuring the limitations that they're putting together and living in what doesn't move forward. And it's okay. You may take another 50 lifetimes to recognize this one. But this one has so much opportunity in it. And again, that Easter park bench is the hello to those hundreds of millions of people. And that's what it was. Hundreds of millions were said hello to. Because, see, they were all in the same place you and I were. What else can I tell you? Now, I'm making all this up.
Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. We'd love to give you more like this, so please put your comments and questions below. It helps us to know what you want to hear about. And of course, we hope to see you over at masteringalchemy.com. You can sign up for our weekly resources so you can get notified every time these great videos come out. And we hope to see you again soon.